All right, this time I'd like to call the meeting to order. So if everyone would please come to order, I'd ask you all to please, I messed up this morning at Natural Resources, but be sure your cell phones are off and that they are. And for those of you who are new to our meetings, I'll let you know that we are being televised, and also we have Paige has a photographer here. They're going to be televising the proceedings also. So if any of you want to appear on the Paige broadcast, and Margaret, I'm sure you and Tom would love to have them. So just see them afterwards. But you are being broadcast. If anyone has any reason now that they don't want to be broadcast on Paige, let us know, because did anyone object to that? I have no. The other you can object to, because that's the state being televised. Yes. Okay. All right. Get those votes. I know how it is. Please scroll over on this gentleman right here. Also, we'd like for you to remember that if you want to speak to anyone up here, do not please come up, but contact one of our assistants over here. Jacob, raise your hand. He'll come out and get a note if you want to pass a note to anyone on the panel. Thank you. At this time, would you please bow your heads and join me, and let's please have a prayer. Thank you. Most gracious Heavenly Father, once again we come to you just thanking you for everything, your goodness to us, for all that you do for us. Dear God, we're so thankful for everyone here who are here to represent their constituents, all these representatives who've been elected to represent their constituents. We ask that you help us to keep in mind that we're here for one reason, and that's to look out for the goodwill and the good and the education of the children of this state. Help us to have the strength, the wisdom, and the knowledge we need to make the right decision that will be best for our schools and for our boys and girls. We ask you to be with us now, lead, guide, and direct us, dear God, and always keep us to thyself. We ask these things in thy name, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, at this time, I would like to do this. Anyone out there today that's new, would you please, any of our lobbyists, we call them our partners out there, education partners that we did not meet last time, would you please stand and let us meet you and give us your name and where you're from? DeKalb Schools. We're glad to have you with us. All right. Anyone else? What group? Boys and girls? Very good. Okay. Anyone else that's here for the first time? Yes. All right. Anyone else? Do we have any students that are out there that you're visiting from your school, or you're here with your representative or your lobbyist? If you please stand up. Anyone from our schools? Bernie, I know you're out there. Stand up and let's see our schools. All right. Introduce your lady in front. You're from.
I'm also a student at George College.
Very good. All right, Bernie, you're from. All right. Where's the gentleman with you? I can't. Alvin, Mr. Wilbanks, would you please stand? Let us meet you. There's Alvin Wilbanks from Gwinnett County Schools. Anyone else from any schools or students out there that we're missing? All right. Some representatives are here today also that are here for the presentation. Now remember, immediately following our meeting today, we will have two presentations, one on the information system. The superintendent is going to have his staff coming and talking about that program. And then immediately, first we're going to have Aaron Hames, who will be talking about the Race to the Top application and where we stand and what we're doing there. So those are the two presentations I know you're going to want to see. So we'll go. Anyone else that we've missed? All right. Do we have any members of our committee that were not here last time that were not introduced to our committee? All right. Please introduce yourself. What's your number? Number 4?
Yes, sir. Number 4. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, afternoon, everyone. I'm Ron Mayo, representative from DeKalb County. I also represent portions of Henry County, House District 91. This is my second term. Glad to be back on education, doing all the great work we need in this state to improve the lives of our children and the outcomes we're getting in our school system, from our school systems. Again, Ron Mayo, House District 91. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Also, I'm happy to have her back. What's your number, Janet? 2? 1. Janet was out sick and she's back. She's almost back to where she should be. We're glad to have her back. Janet's my man. And anything you need, any questions you have, go up and see Janet. Don't ask me. She'd be glad to take care of you. Also, we've asked every one of you to please come by the office and give us your name, your cell phone, your contact, email, all your information. Jacob is putting together. Do you remember the little booklet we did? David, where's David McCluskey? We're going to ask you to help us out again with that. You did such a marvelous job last time. We're going to ask you to work with Jacob to help us pull that together. That was fantastic. A little booklet, you remember, had all of your names in it, your pictures and contact information, supporters of the education committee. So please go by and see Janet and be sure we have all your information if you have not done that. And members of the committee, remember once again that we do have $25 committee dues that we do use for flowers and other things. And so please go ahead and see Tommy, our secretary here, Representative Benton. He'll be taking that money. And we had a lot of you last time come through, so we appreciate you doing that. Are there any questions or anything, comments from the committee before we get started? Anybody have something they want to ask or add to it? All right. If not, I'd like to call on at this time our Vice Chair, David Casas, who will assign bills and talk about legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Things have been a little slow, and we're not complaining. We've only received one bill, House Bill 130, this week from Representative Maxwell. This one's dealing with the Career and Technical Education Advisory Commission, and that bill is simply changing the language to where they only have to meet at least once annually. It just clears up some language. So instead of tying it up in subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, what we're going to do is just keep it in the full committee, and we'll just hear it next week.
That'd be good. What we're going to try to do, housekeeping bills and bills that we don't think need a lot of debate. And if any of you have a different opinion on that, please make your feelings known before we make the final assignment. We'll take those up in full committee instead of having to spend our time in subcommittees on that. So that's good. Anybody have any concerns about that? Okay, so it'll be done. That'll be taken up next week at the meeting then. Look in your folders also at your subcommittee assignments. That's in your folder on the right side. We have 3 subcommittees. That's the Academic Achievement and Curriculum, Academic Support, and Academic Innovations. Now, the Achievement and Curriculum Chair, David Casas, and Rick Austin's Vice Chair, Secretary. Academic Support, again, is Randy Nix and Ann Purcell. And Academic Innovations, Ed Setzler, and Representative Valerie Clark will be those committees. Now, look at it, and I had a couple of you that had a couple of comments last time. You felt you wanted to serve on 2 of them or whatever. I'll be glad to work with you, so let me know. And remember, this is where all the discussion takes place for any bill or piece of legislation that we are taking up. And next week, we're going to be having 2 very, very important piece of legislation that will be assigned and will be taken up probably starting the following week. So I encourage all of you to attend these meetings. Remember, only the members of the committee may vote, but all of you are there to ask questions, and we encourage you to attend. Any questions about subcommittees? All right. Yes, ma'am. What's your number? 5?
Are we having a meeting next week other than our luncheon?
Good question. Next week, Janet, do you have a copy of that memo we sent out? Let me, if you could get it to me. Next week on Thursday, pass that up to me, Ron. On Thursday, if you received your memo today, there was a little misunderstanding. You don't have the one, Janet, do you, that has the information about who's speaking, who's going to be with us next week, do you? Michelle Reed will be here next week for a luncheon meeting. And Janet, I think it's scheduled at what time? 12 o'clock in 216. Lunch will be provided. And that she was the former in Washington, I think, D.C., head of schools. She's meeting with the governor at 11. She's coming in to meet with us and answer questions at 12, have lunch with us. Immediately following that meeting, we will take up just one piece of legislation. We will have our regular ed meeting to keep us from having to have another meeting. Okay. You want to say anything about her, Michelle, Amy?
I just read a lot about her. I'm very excited about meeting.
Say something. What's your number, 19? All right.
Okay, good morning. Or it's afternoon now.
Good.
I've just read a lot about her. She was on the cover of Time magazine a year or so ago, and just very innovative. I'm very excited about meeting her.
Very good. And it's Thursday, Janet, again. Thursday at 12 o'clock in room 216. And you all got their notice. Now, there was also a little confusion. We had several people that wanted to change the meetings, and the Speaker's office encouraged us to try to get together and do some changing and try to work on standing committees. You notice you got a notice that said that we were moving ours till Tuesday. Well, it seemed to cause some conflicts with more people than I could imagine. So I have never in my life, you move one piece and it opens up 12 other gates. So they have moved us back to our 3 o'clock time slot on Thursday, and hopefully everyone can attend, and that's fewer problems than we had the other way. So our meetings will be at 3 o'clock on Thursdays. Our subcommittees will be at the call of the vice chairs. Okay. Is that everything? Any questions about that? If not, I'll ask at this time, Representative Costas, if you'll call our first bill that we have on the agenda for today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the bill that we have in full committee is House Bill 39 by Representative Benton, and so that's the bill we will be debating today.
Do all of you have a copy of the bill? Okay. Try it now. Everything's Abby. Quit, pardon? Can you? I've got the volume up all the way. All right, try it that time. They're all on. Try the mid table there and see if they want to work. See if that one's on. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bring to you today House Bill 39. House Bill 39 is a bill that came through this committee last year. It passed the committee, it passed the House, it passed the Senate Education Committee and got stuck in Senate rules. What this bill is attempting to do is to save your school system some money. Right now, and let me just back up a minute and tell you a little bit of how this bill came to our attention. The people that have co-signed this bill we were all at the Northeast Georgia RESA superintendent's breakfast, and they brought this up to us and said that it was costing the issue was costing a lot of their systems a lot of money. And the issue is that when a child is absent so many days, and after the school has tried to contact a parent or guardian through either a phone call, email, a visit, whatever, right now they are required to send a registered letter. And not only are they required to send a registered letter, but most of them have a person that handles all this. So that is a person that's on salary that's having to do this as well. What we are proposing is that we give the systems a choice. They can either send registered letters or they can send first class letter. The difference is about $4 a letter, and it will save your systems a lot of money. My local system, it's going to save them about $11,000 a year. Some of your larger systems, they budget a tremendous amount of money for this to meet this requirement. If they now only have to send out a first class mail, that will cut their costs tremendously, where they might be able to offer another program, have a parapro or something like that on staff. So that's what we're wanting to do here. And Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Are there any questions? Any questions? We have several, all right?
All right.
Mike 2.
Thank you very much. There's also some language that's been stricken. What's the reason for striking the summary of the possible consequences and penalties?
I would have to defer that to Legislative Council on that. Was there a reason that we struck that?
The reason was
Okay. Most of the time, that attendance policy is in an agenda that is sent home and has to be signed, and parents have to sign off on that. And so we've taken out the penalty. All we're doing, that we have to notify them of the penalty. We're just saying that we're notifying them of the attendance policy.
And so, if I may have a
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
follow-up. And so we're not telling them the consequences or the potential consequences of a continued lack of attendance?
That's the way I'm reading it now, yes.
Is that correct, Betsy?
Yes.
The consequences are still there. We're just not notifying them. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, the school could always include that in their statement of attendance requirements, but just reading that at face value, I don't think they would have to include the consequences in it.
The school would not have to include. Okay. Any other? Is that your questions, Representative Ash? All right. Next question, number 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, my sweet mate, next door neighbor. I certainly support the concept of saving dollars. I mean, I've had contracts before where I had to send registered mail to folks and understand the price. It's not just the cost of the registered mail; it's the cost of the individual having to go through the process. I get that, and I think that's a fair intent. My concern is, and I just want your feedback. I mean, to what Representative Ash raised was, we've got a circumstance where parents are subject to 30 days imprisonment. Now we can look at what common practice is and recognize that's not happening frequently, but the powers of the state are what the powers of the state are, and what we've got is we've got a structure today where the status quo is if your child's failing to meet attendance requirements, there's a certified letter that goes out to make sure that said parent and guardian gets that letter, and the letter says you are subject to imprisonment for up to 30 days and such fines and community service if your child doesn't attend school. Now, there may be lots of reasons why the child's not attending. It could be a child that's being rebellious, or it could be a parent that's being kind of loose with it. I'm just concerned that in the effort to save dollars, we're also further exposing. In essence, what we're doing is the status quo of a registered letter that says you could go to jail comes in as a letter that's saying that, frankly, could be ditched as junk mail if they didn't open it. But if they do open it, that doesn't tell them they're subject to imprisonment. I just think that's a big step, and parents are being exposed by strictening the language in lines 24 through 27.
Want to respond to that?
I think that your point is understood, but somewhere along the line we've got to decide that parents are ultimately responsible for their child, and that's part of the problem that we've gotten away from, is that everybody's responsible but somebody else. And so we're simply saying here, we're giving the system a choice. We're telling them that they can either send it registered letter, or they can send it first class postage. The information will be the same. We're not. It's just saying that the public schools shall provide to the parent, guardian, or other person having control of each or charge of each child a written statement of attendance requirements. That's what we're saying. We've marked out the summary of possible consequences.
Let me ask you this: let's take this out of the school context. Let's take it to a criminal context. If someone was being issued a summons by the court to show up and testify, if they were subpoenaed or otherwise, would you support, rather than a sheriff's deputy serving that warrant or summons, would you support a letter going out from the court to the individual that says if you're not there on the 15th of May, you're going to be in contempt of court and can go to jail for 30 days? Would you support that?
I think it would have to be. It would depend on what the circumstances were. In this case, it's attendance.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I would submit that we don't expose citizens to misdemeanor treatments for showing up in court. We make sure they get that notification because they are subject to the heavy hand of the law. I'm concerned in something like attendance which frankly might be treated by some parents as being less weighty than showing up in court. They might not recognize it's a misdemeanor or subject to. That if we don't even put it in the, if we're going to back off of the certified letter requirement, I think it's a big step to back off the requirement of telling them what they're subject to under the law. That's just a concern I'd share.
Okay, all right.
Any comment on that? All right. Number 11.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, it seems to me that a person should know, A, that the consequence, as was illustrated, the consequences of not sending a child to school is an uneducated child. And it also seems to me that on line 18 of this and 19 that the school system is required to make 2 reasonable attempts before a letter is even sent.
That's correct.
And I think in this day and time, personal responsibility has become one of those, well, I think I might have to do something sometime. And I'd rather, if someone ended up having to go before a court and say, you know what, I haven't sent my child to school, hadn't been a priority in my home, or I didn't know that my child wasn't going, et cetera, and so forth, then we might get somewhere. So I don't have a problem necessarily with not doing the certified letter because there's going to be 2 reasonable attempts, and it seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that the intent, your intent is to make sure that we take a reasonable effort, make a reasonable effort to do this, and at the end of the day, in school systems that are having to furlough teachers to help make the bottom line meet, try to save $1 or $2, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Number 15, is that Representative Thomas? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that there is some language struck from the bill. Frankly, it doesn't concern me. I mean, we've got 2 attempts to reach parents. We've got a letter that will go out as a 3rd attempt. The school district isn't in the business of providing legal advice to parents. A parent ought to know that they have some responsibilities, not only to themselves and their children, but to the broader society to make sure their children comply with attendance requirements and actually go to school and get educated. So, I'm not sure I see that this is a terrible thing to not specifically outline the potential legal consequences of not complying with this requirement. I don't feel particularly strongly about that one way or another, and I think if the committee seems to have some discomfort with it, it may be worth revisiting and just leaving that requirement in there. I don't see that as some kind of deal breaker or anything on the bill, but I certainly think the cost of certified letters to go out to notify folks for a 3rd time of what they ought to be doing already it's reasonable to change that to a first-class letter.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Representative Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The
Let's
only
see.
concern that I have, I send out congratulatory letters to the graduates locally, and if I send out like 450, there are always 30 or 40 that come back returned to me for the wrong address. That's my concern, is that the letter may not get to the parents without a signature. Although I am here to help save where we can, I'm just trying to figure out what's the best route to do
But
that.
the registered letter wouldn't get to them either because there would be no signature to be made there either.
But at least it would come back, and they would know.
Well, it would come back.
Oh, it
to the
would
school.
too. You're right. Never mind. Thank you.
Number 29. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo the sentiments shared by Representative Setzler. I would agree that going to adding the first-class mail is a good step to save the school system's money. I would prefer that we keep the language in notifying them of the criminal consequences that they would face.
Okay. I want you to be sure you pay particular attention to the fact that we've tried twice. They've tried twice to reach them, and it does not say they cannot send a signed or they cannot send certified mail. It says they wouldn't have to, though. I see no further questions. Do you have no other questions? But I'm going to give anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment. We usually don't do this, but if you would remain where you are, Representative, but we don't usually do this in the full committee, but since we're not having a subcommittee meeting, I would allow anyone in the audience to have 1 minute to make a comment. Is anyone who'd like, if you would, step up to the podium, and I'll try to get some volume. I may not, but you may have to go down there where Representative Benton is, but I'll try it, okay? You'll have to step over here. Anyone else who's interested in speaking, please come forward and be ready, okay? Representative Bennett, you can come on back. Go ahead.
I'm Representative Tinubu from House District 60, and I share the same concerns that Representative Ash and Setzler and the other gentleman raised about not having the consequences reflected in the letter. And I'm also in support of having a registered letter rather than sending it just first class. I'd like to also know how much money this whole process is supposed to be saving us potentially. What are the cost implication of not sending it first class?
Okay. Do you want to make a comment on that one, Representative Benton?
Registered.
I had an email here from Gwinnett County Schools. They budgeted $53,000 to do this year. They're going to spend over $30,000 this year in sending out registered letters.
You said Gwinnett County had budgeted $53,000. You said, and they will spend over $30,000 just for registered mail. It would save them.
7,000 letters.
Sir. 7,000 letters. Okay.
And I'd like to also, at some point, and not necessarily here today, but look at those costs compared to other costs that they incur. Okay. And to me, that to have people potentially, serving time. We all have kids. We know we send them to school, and sometimes they don't get to where we send them. But for them to potentially serve 30 days?
Yeah. That is the present law, though.
I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm saying not to notify them, to me, is
that they could serve time.
Is not what we should be in the business of. We should be
sharing
that information.
I would hope that every school in their newsletter and their information they send out, and I would have notified parents up front. This is the state law. I would assume that parents know this. I can't imagine any school that hadn't sent out a handbook or whatever that parents wouldn't know. But you may be right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And with the state of our literacy in this state, is even questionable that some parents even are able to read.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Now, anyone else? I have one more. Okay. Please introduce yourself, Ms. Fitzgerald.
I'm Sally Fitzgerald with Georgia PTA, and this is not an organizational comment, but to let you know that another place in the law, every student upon enrollment is to get a student handbook, and all of this information, these consequences and these offenses, are to be in the student handbook, which could be several weeks before such a letter has to be sent out. So, and in terms of the certified mail, it can be refused by the addressee. First class mail cannot be refused by the addressee. That's information that I have heard in rooms such as this down here at the Capitol on other issues from U.S. postal employees. So those are just two things that you might want to consider as you look at this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Angela Palm with the Georgia School Boards Association. Sally said part of what I wanted to tell you about the handbook, but one more thing about the student handbook is state law requires that it be given to the parent and the parent sign that they have received it, and that signature has to be turned into the schools, and you passed that law just a few years ago.
Right.
So the information about this is in the handbook. They signed it, they got the handbook, and if they don't read it, shame on them. But I appreciate Representative Benton's efforts here to look at everywhere we can to save money and give them that flexibility. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, no more questions. Do I have a motion? All right, I have 22 pass. I have a motion do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any comment? Number 24.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer to the author what I would offer as a friendly amendment to eliminate the stricken language on lines 24 through 31 and eliminate the added language statement of attendance requirements on lines 27 to, in essence, the effect of the friendly amendment offered would be to perhaps make this bill more appealing to the Senate. I don't know what the holdup was last year, but certainly
it was rules.
But certainly to allow the gentleman's underlying concern of cost and first-class mail to stay within the bill. But this is nothing more than a written statement. There's no additional cost, but it is a written statement, and it certainly shows the parents the seriousness of school attendance. If for whatever reason they didn't understand, this letter that's being sent out as the third notice would certainly be a substantial notification of them.
All right, so state your amendment.
Again,
Betsy, do you have it? Okay, state your amendment.
All stricken language from 24 through lines 31 be removed.
All right.
So that language would persist, and the added language on line 27, quote, statement of attendance requirements, unquote, would be removed.
Would be removed.
Yes.
So, all right, I have a motion for an amendment. I have a second. All right, all in favor, please.
Mr. Chairman, I offer that as a friendly amendment to the
I know you did. Do you have any problems with it? He said, I saw his head shaking, so that's why.
Okay.
You got your second? I'm going to take a vote. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Amendment is added. Okay, now you have the bill. We have a motion to pass as amended. All right, all in favor of the House Bill 39 being passed as amended. Does anyone need the amendment read? I hope not. So I'm going to move on. So please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. It's unanimous. So this will be moved to rules, I guess, Monday, Janet. And so,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right, Representative Casas.
Mr. Chairman, for members of the committee, we just want to just clarify a procedure that we've had in the past, and we want to just streamline it a little better this session. Is that before, when you introduced a bill and it came to our committee and we were going to assign it to a subcommittee, you were required to submit a summary with that bill. We're holding off. We're not requiring that. However, you will have to provide a bill summary when the bill is headed to rules. So when the bill clears the committee, then we're going to request of you at that time to submit a bill summary so that we can provide that to the whip's office. You don't have to do it on the front end, only if the bill clears the committee.
Now, if you go to rules and say my bill was not on the list, it's because we do not have your bill summary. Now, we will notify the author one time. Janet will, and we will not.
By registered mail?
By registered mail. Who will do that? Abby, will you do that? Who does that, Janet?
I'll email out. As soon as it's first read, I email out that form to everybody.
He has a form she'll email out to all the people. So he'll have, before it goes to rules, okay? I have 15. Representative Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I have a copy of the bill summary. I understand the first parts where we explain what it is, what we're trying to do with it. Is there some possibility of getting rid of all the ideological questions at the bottom about family values and size of government and whatnot? Because they're really not that important for considering the merits of a bill, from my humble opinion.
Any questions or comments on that? Let me see one of the list. Let me see it and tell them what they're talking about. Do I have one of those? I know. I'm going to tell them. We have no control. This is sent out from the whip's office, so we have no control over that. But what he's referring to is it asks you, what does the bill do? Please provide a short, concise statement as to why this piece of legislation is needed, and then describe the opposition, if any, and what it says. Does the bill have a fiscal note? And if so, briefly describe the fiscal impact this legislation will have. And I'll tell you this right now, all members of the committee, if there's any cost, we're not going to take it up. We're not going to take them up. We'll hold them and see what happens with the budget, but you've got to have the fiscal note. And then what he's talking about, what Representative Thomas is talking about, it says at the bottom, please circle or highlight if the statement applies to a bill and explain. Does this reduce the size of government? And that's where they can communicate to people, yes or no. Does it strengthen our traditional family structure? Does it reduce the tax burden on our citizens or increases personal responsibility? Those are the four things.
And Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, anybody reading a bill ought to be able to come to some conclusion on those things without making this some silly requirement.
Okay.
And Representative Thomas, you know, you have a valid argument, but it's something that needs to be taken up with the whip's office, because it's the whip's office that's requiring that information.
Mr. Chairman, maybe you and I can go visit them and
I'll be glad to go with you. You and I, we're going to do that. I'd love to. I want to go with you. Brian, we're going to do that tomorrow. No, we're going to do it Monday. I'm serious. We're going to do it. He's my seatmate. He won't let me forget. Representative Dash.
Mr. Chairman, this is just sort of an extraneous comment.
A what?
An extraneous
comment.
Okay. It's really sad that we had to spend time in this committee talking about 7,000 letters going out because we have schools that kids aren't attending. We really need to be addressing what is it that we can do to keep from having to send that letter, either certified or regular mail. Right. And I understand there's some bills coming in this committee to encourage schools to have programs for kids who perhaps are on those lists. And I just think it's important for us as a committee to recognize that we're not so much about sending letters. We're about educating kids.
And Representative Ash, isn't it true that you served on 2 of those committees and you think there's some good stuff coming, right?
I think there's some great stuff coming.
I appreciate that, Representative Ash. Number 24.
Just a parliamentary inquiry. For the committee moving forward, are we going to call the question on the bill and then have folks systematically recognized for amendments? Or do you need to race to get your amendment motion in before the question's called?
Most of our legislation, I'll be honest with you, I felt this thing moved through so fast last year, it was like a greased pig. It just, and I was kind of surprised with your statement today, Representative Setzer. But so I did not expect this. But in the subcommittees, we're going to handle that. We'll be having amendments presented earlier where we'll know, and before it gets to full committee, we won't have this.
Mr. Chairman, I would just offer that, and I'm not a great purveyor of Robert's rules. Right. I do think, for the sake of the process, right, both in subcommittee and full committee, that there not be this sort of duel for who can get recognized to make the motion for an amendment before the question's called. That's just chaotic.
But you notice I did not do that. I recognized everyone, sir.
And I just wanted to ask, maybe the vice chair is the parliamentarian.
He's going to
is the question going to be called, and then will there be an opportunity for amendments to be offered? Is that the process?
That's going to be the parliamentary procedure is that
that's
you call
the way it
the
works.
question, and then you take up amendments.
Then you take your amendment.
I just want to make that clear.
And that's why I let it happen today, because this was a full committee. I thought just a little. Isn't it interesting how these little insignificant bills really become big bills? So, but in your subcommittee, when you run it, that's the way it'll be operating. Yes, sir. What's that, Kathy? We're going to talk about them. I know this committee. That's one thing about this committee for you new people. It's great. All right. Any other questions on that? All right. I have a piece of legislation here that I want to talk about, and that I want everyone on this. I would love to have everyone on the Education Committee please sign this. I'm not telling you have to, but I think you're going to want to. There was a study committee. Representative Carter was on it. Representative Ash, you were on this committee. You worked with us on this committee. Representative Kaiser, Dixon, England, and I were all on this committee. We were looking at we were concerned about the QBE funding formula and felt like we needed to really look at QBE. So the Speaker this summer commissioned a group to look at and to make a proposal and help me out on those who are on it, to look at a format for establishing a study commission to look at funding of schools. And you notice I didn't say necessarily QB, but funding of schools. We have a piece of legislation here that is supported by the governor. This will be the first time that we've had it legislatively done through the House, joint House and Senate bill signed by the governor. The three groups are pushing this, and it is here. We're going to introduce it Monday. And it's simply the QBE Study Commission. It establishes how a committee will operate. It'll be a commission. There'll be 25 members. It tells who's appoint the committees, educators, parents, business people, teachers, all. And then it gives a timeline when all this will take place. I'm going to pass it around. If you want a copy to look at, you may have it. But I will say this. It is a bipartisan bill. Representative Abrams is totally endorsing this. Representative Carter, would you like to say anything? And Representative Ash, could y'all say something about, because y'all been on the committee too. So who wants to go first? All right.
It's just very necessary. We've needed this. It's been, what, 25, 30 years, Skip, since it's been looked at closely, and we're just ready to make some changes to what we've been doing with education funding for all these years.
All right. Representative Ash?
We've had a number of attempts. None of them seem to have worked. It's time to make something work.
And this was and on the Senate side, Senator Freddie Powell Sims, Rep. Butterworth, Munn. So we had both groups working on this, and the governor's staff has worked with us, and so we're all behind it. But so I'd love, if you'd like to, and if you say I don't want to sign it, you don't have to. But I have it here for everyone on the committee to sign. Any other questions that anybody like to ask at this time about that? We're going to take a short break of about 5 minutes. We're coming back for our information meeting. Thank you all so much for a great meeting.